element of that. I think I do something that people seem to like.
Yeah.
Which is really nice because I know that there are enough guitar players out there that can play me into the ground.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on stolen Yagara and Turrbal lands, and as settlers of colour, we reflect upon the damaging legacy of colonisation. Always was, always will be.
My name is Imraan Palekar. I play guitar and I play music. It's about as simple as that, really.
Tell me, like, obviously you've had a bit of a journey to get here, but I want to sort of pick it up at the now. Like, what's the kind of life outlook now? What's this visit about?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The right now it's pretty hectic, actually. I'm primarily working as a session guitar player. Well, session musician. I play whatever I can to, support other original music artists.
Right.
And I'm based in London. So I've just got a full year of touring at the moment. And so I ended up in Australia working with an artist, Priya Ragu, who's kind of like on the up and up. And as you know, we played the Sydney Opera House, which was amazing. And then we also did a show in Melbourne. And then just while I was around, I decided to come over to Brisbane because I used to live here.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting married. So I got married while I was
whilst
here.
you've been here?
While I've been here,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So literally exactly a week ago. I'm 1 week into marriage right now.
Okay. Right.
Which is wild to say.
Wow.
I can't believe I'm saying that right now.
Okay. And is it both yourself and your partner that are from this area? Or?
Well, we met here.
Okay.
Which is why we did it here.
Right.
So, but she's living in Cairns at the moment, and she's a Darwin girl as well.
Okay.
So, funnily enough, you had Nee on the podcast.
Yeah.
She knows Nee from up in Darwin.
From up north. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
So kind of small world, man.
Yeah.
Really small world. Yeah. So she lives she lives in Cairns at the moment, and we're just working to get her to move over to London.
Okay.
Because I've been there for like the last 5 years. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. Right now, just working as a session musician. My whole year is booked out with like tour after tour after tour, working primarily just with two artists.
Yeah.
Just Priya Ragu and Jordan Rakei, who's also a Brisbane boy. And just doing like bits and bobs with whoever I can in London. London's it's a melting pot of music.
Right.
So there's plenty to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so that relationship, like Cairns to London, how and you're a touring artist, like how have you been making that work?
With great effort.
Yeah.
And a lot of talking, man, a lot of
Okay.
communication.
Right.
Dude, it's wild. Like, I won't get into it too much because I don't know how she feels about me just like telling the internet world about our story. But I think it's a great story, honestly. Like, we met here and we clicked and we were together for a few years and we were living together.
Yeah.
And at some point, she's Japanese.
Okay.
And at some point, she kind of just had this feeling of like, I really want to go to Tokyo and sort of connect with my culture and understand it a little better.
Right.
And so we did like a long distance thing for a while.
Yeah.
And we were younger then. We were
Okay.
like 23, 24. And it was just hard, dude. And the communication eventually broke down. And it was just like, this is too hard for us. Let's just be friends. And then it kind of like reignited recently after she moved back from Japan. So she left Japan and we hung out. She actually came over to London and we hung out there and it just totally rekindled, blossomed. And from then on, it's just been like, let's just communicate, let's work on this, let's plan, let's think about our futures, which is a hard thing for me. I've spent my whole life never thinking about my future, ever.
Right.
Things have just presented themselves to me and I followed it. So yeah, man, it's wild, but I don't recommend the long distance thing, but it's a real test.
Yeah.
If you can like survive it, man, your relationship can survive anything, man. Really.
Right.
That's what I think anyway.
Okay. And then so you've been able to kind of block out this time and like, I'm already down in Sydney for Vivid and a few other shows. Let's tee up a wedding in this little pocket of time. Is that what kind of multiple years of touring lifestyle kind of, I guess you need to fit the life in there. Is that kind of how?
Yeah, that's what it is a little bit, yeah. I guess I've never properly had to figure out or navigate having a relationship in the context of touring, because I've like, when I really started properly touring, I kind of mostly was single, you know, nothing too serious. I've been touring since I was a kid, but like it was all small time. I was always around Australia and around New Zealand. And only very seldomly international. So I never really had to like navigate this properly, but now it's like, it's mad. You're away for 3 weeks at a time, and then the festival season comes around, and if you're in the UK or Europe, festival season just means you are constantly on planes from here to there, to here to here, like every weekend or whatever. Yeah, I've never really had to navigate it until now, which is why I'm like, wow, like diaries are important, calendars are good.
Yeah.
Man, it's weird to think I'm in my 30s now. I'm only learning that, like how to manage your time better. Yeah.
Right. Do you find that you can, like, do you have to liaise with a whole bunch of management and touring agencies and logistics and flights to like try and organize pockets of time elsewhere, or is everything kind of in and out of London, and that's the sort of?
It's in and out of London completely.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, the two main artists I'm working with, they actually work under the same booking agent.
Oh, right. Okay.
So there's kind of like a good overview of everything. I get everything pretty around the same time sort of thing, and everything's booked pretty well in advance. So you just sort of plan your year out accordingly. And thankfully for me, nothing has ever really crossed over or clashed.
Right.
I've just kind of been lucky that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't know how, but yeah.
Great. And perhaps I'd imagine there's some sort of coordination before things trickle down to you, that maybe they're looking at those two artists and.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm not entirely sure.
That way. Right.
Honestly, not sure. But maybe it's just happy accidents. I don't know.
Okay.
'Cause some of it is literally like, I'll get off a show and flying out, you know, I'll fly back in, and then the very next day I've got rehearsal with the other artists sort of thing. And it's always just like, just lined up perfectly.
Right.
So I don't know. I think I'm just a little bit lucky.
Okay. I think I clocked an earlier chat with you where I think you were just settling into London still, and particularly at that point, you'd spent so much time on the road that you hadn't had much of a chance to connect with London as yet. Have you managed to do that in the last 5 years?
I have. Yeah, absolutely. After COVID.
Okay.
So yeah, COVID was kind of the thing that was just got in the way.
Yeah.
Because I had a year of touring that was like amazing and like learning a little bit about what's going on in London. Most of the time you'd be like in a thing at a festival in Amsterdam, and then you'd meet some guys there who are from London as well, and you'd be like, oh yeah, cool, well I'm in London too.
Yeah.
And then it's always just going, oh yeah, we should hook up sometime, let's get in the studio together. And then you just never get around to do it because everyone's a touring musician and working.
Yeah.
And then I've never been very good at like networking anyway, so I never chased any of that up. And then COVID hit, and it was just like, well, I'll just lock myself in my room and play guitar for the next year and a half or two. But
were you able to do that over there, or did you get kicked back?
Yeah, I was over there.
Over here, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is good, actually. At first, I was scared of staying over there.
Right.
And I wanted to come back here, or back to New Zealand even, but the laws are pretty stringent. It was pretty hard to get back.
Uh-huh.
And in the end, I was like, I'm just going to renew my visa and see how this goes. It was kind of hard because I was around the point that my visa was expiring was around the time COVID was kicking off. So I was kind of really given this like big choice. Like, do you stay here? Do you pay this money to stay here? Or do you just call it a day, get out of here, and maybe come back when everything settles down? Yeah, I'm so glad I didn't. Man, especially because, I don't know if you remember, because everything's such a blur, but like at the beginning of COVID, everything was really hard for the UK. The UK was really, really strict about everything.
Right. NHS was really struggling.
They were slammed. Yeah, it was really, really hard, man. And so they were just trying to take every precaution they could. And meanwhile, I'm looking back home and everyone's like, oh, yeah, we got a couple of cases, you know, but it's all right. We're still going to work. And I was like, oh, my God, I need to go there.
Yeah.
And then it kind of completely 180 just like flipped. And like Melbourne really struggled. My hometown, Auckland, was like having a really, really hard time.
Yeah.
And at that point, we were slowly opening everything up again. And then I started playing shows again. And, there were controlled environments and everything, but we got to play shows. And then I'd call home and my mum would be like, oh, yeah, one case popped up, so they've just like shut down the whole city. I'm like, what? That's crazy. I'm so glad I didn't go back there. I'd have nothing to do if I went back there. So
Right.
yeah.
How has it been accepting London as a new home, and how do you compare that to your other homes of Brissie and Auckland and elsewhere?
For me, it is a little bit like, this is the place I need to be for what I'm doing right now. I want to be a working musician. I want to make my way into the industry and be somebody. And that's the place to do it, And when I come back here now, I'm like, wow, like I can see the degrees of separation just get so much wider all of a sudden. It doesn't mean you can't make it from here. You absolutely can. But it's so much harder. When you're over there, you're just like that. You're just right next to people of prominence all the time.
Right.
And you start to recognize, well, the music scene isn't as big as I thought it was.
Right.
Especially when you meet people that work behind the scenes.
Okay.
Because the people that do all of that stuff, there's way less of them. Sound engineers, booking agents,
Right.
management companies and all that sort of thing.
Okay.
It's a few people that run all of that stuff. So if you know this guy, that guy knows this guy, and that person, that woman. And
Right.
so everything's really interconnected.
Okay. They're the glue that's like holding all these.
Yeah, it's kind of what it feels like.
Pieces.
Or at least just the connections are like really close.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, calling it home still feels a little weird. I don't know if it's home,
Yeah.
especially culturally. I don't hate the culture. I get along with it just fine.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty good at just assimilating. But it's whenever I come back to Australia, I'm like, oh, this is so much nicer. People are just nicer. I feel welcome here.
Right.
Smiles are genuine. Conversations are real nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Socially, it's like different, very different.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you sit with like climate? Like we're getting into so-called Brissie winter here, which some people might laugh at. But then if you think about our lack of insulation and poor architecture in a lot of this, like we do this, it gets cold in here.
It does. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
how do you sit with the different climates?
I didn't realize how used to Brisbane I was, or like Queensland in general.
Yeah.
Going over there, it's like, man, this cold is like blistering. And like the way they treat houses there is like even worse, because a lot of it's like really old.
Right.
You have to jump over a lot of fences to be able to like do anything to an old Victorian house, for example.
Right.
So there is no insulation and there's no aircon, because they're like, oh, it's mostly cold. But when it gets hot, it gets so hot.
Okay.
It's really hot and you're just like sweating and you can't do much about it.
Right.
So it kind of sucks. To be honest, I like the weather here is way easier.
Yeah.
And then spending a winter 2 winters in a row in London,
Yeah.
it was like pretty dreary.
Right.
Like I didn't.
The
I always-
COVID winter especially.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, Christmas time, you sit at home with your housemate and that's it. You know what I mean? It was dreary.
Yeah.
And you're like trying to make the best of it,
Right.
but you're all sitting there like, this sucks. We all know this sucks. So that sucked. And then like, I think, I'm not sure, but I feel like I experienced some small level of depression. I've always felt like I'm not capable of having depression.
Yeah.
I've always thought that I'm like, I don't know, like mindset or whatever. But I started to realize, no, this is why it is actually a medical thing. Because I started experiencing things physically and emotionally that I never felt before.
Right. Right.
And just from that experience, it was, and you're like thinking about what you're going to do next or the future. And it's just like, I can't even think about it. And just the heaviness and anyway, not diagnosed or anything. I'm just saying that
just you've been feeling.
Yeah, I've got friends who have like clinical depression and like speaking to them about what it feels like. I'm like, oh, I actually I understand that now on a deeper level than I did before.
Right. I my cousin spent some time living in London, and I can't remember what the middle letter stands for, but she was diagnosed with the SAD, seasonal affective depression disorder.
I've heard of that.
But which I think seems to be, largely to do with climate, maybe access to sun, maybe vitamin D, some of these things. So they're definitely. I know that I was someone who chased the sun for like 10 years, right? Like I was on a loop around Australia, and then I went off to South Asia, so I was like very much in that in that basket. But I can definitely see and relate to how that would be challenging.
Man, the sun is important. I only really appreciated it when it was taken away from me, because when the sun does come out in London, I should say, I really feel my mood improve.
Yeah.
Like I really feel it. I never felt that here because the sun's out all the time. It was like, man, no, I get really happy on a sunny day, and you feel it from everyone. It's a real thing.
I've only spent the briefest little time in London off the back of another trip, and it was right at that early spring time where the first little rays come out, and then there's like bikinis in the parks, and like all of that.
They get like 20 degrees, and they're just like, shirts off and beers, and oh man, they go hard.
Right.
It's so funny.
Right.
Like, what are you guys doing? I'm cold. What are you doing? Wow.
So the Brissie boy or the Australasian boy in there is like still rocking hard.
Still there, man.
Yeah. You are doing a lot of touring at the moment, and there can be, more than ever perhaps. You've done plenty of touring in your time, but there can be a tendency for people that are outside the industry to maybe glamorize that, or go like, oh, you get all these flights and you get to stay in these hotels. But like, I always try to remind people that like you are working, and this is work. That's a work transport, that's work accommodation. Anyone who's traveling anywhere is getting these things. It's another job on the road. What's as you're maybe experiencing perhaps more and more of your year, more and more of your schedule in this touring space, like what are some of your reflections on that as a job?
Man, that's a good question. It's a really good question. I mean, I have to be honest, like there are moments where I actually just go, this is crazy. This is my job.
Yeah.
This is really cool. This is my job.
Yeah.
And especially the touring groups that I work with, I'm with a lot of really great people, and we all get along really well, and we work well together. Mm-hmm. So as a result, you start to, you kind of forget sometimes, like when you have a day off and you and your mates are like, oh, let's just go sightseeing. Let's go have a nice dinner. Let's just go play some pool. Just something simple like that.
Yeah.
But you're like in the middle of New York and you're doing this. And then at some point you're like, wait, this is actually a travel day. I get paid for this day.
Right.
For this day away from work.
Yeah.
I'm on the job. So honestly, I will say like the glamorizing is fair enough on some level.
Yeah.
I think it actually is. Uh-huh. But also, I think the thing that people don't realize is how ordinary most of the time is. Because you only, like especially with social media now.
Right.
It's like, oh, look, I'm playing here. Now I'm here. And I'm flying here and flying there. And it's just like, you've been to more places than most people will ever be in their lives.
Yeah.
But most of it is like in and out. You don't get to see much. Early mornings, red-eye flights, and like, or if you're on a tour bus, it's like, get on the bus in the middle of the night, fall asleep, wake up in a new city, play the show, go to sleep, wake up in a new city again.
Right.
And you don't get much time to do anything other than your job.
Yeah.
Which I'm totally fine with.
Right.
But so it's kind of interesting to like explain that to people. And also, most of the job of touring is just waiting. It's crazy. I always tell people this. I'm like, most of my job is actually waiting. Like a gig is like up to 90 minutes, right? But to go to that gig, I've got to go to the meetup spot where our transport is picking us up.
Yeah.
So first I get an Uber to that place. So I wait for my Uber. My Uber comes. I sit in my Uber. Then I go to the meetup spot. We get in a van, sit in the van for like an hour, go to Heathrow Airport.
Right.
Sit and wait at the airport for whatever else you need to do. Get on a plane, sitting around, get to the gig eventually. We'll just fast forward through all the other waiting in between. We get to the gig. We got to wait for the stage to be ready. Then you set up, and then you do your sound check, and then you sit around and wait until you play the gig. Like, there's so little activity in between that you actually like have to work to like keep your mind kind of snappy and alive and be in the right mindset to play a show, to be able to give a good show.
Right.
Because I can see how people could just become pretty fed up with touring life. I know a lot of people that are just tired of it and they just go, I don't want to do this anymore. Or they get on stage and they play, but they just don't even care that they're there. Their mind is elsewhere. I never want to be that. But I can see how it happens. For sure. Still, though, it's a privilege. It is such a privilege for that to be my work. I'm really glad I've been able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you're busting out the calendar, do you have a sense of like how many of your weeks of the year are on the road?
Yeah. Actually, what's really crazy is when you have enough work that you're going, how many weeks do I have free?
To be able
to just do whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't have a lot of free weeks. Like I actually have to block out. I have to basically, boring story, but like I have to get a US visa for this other tour, and you need to block out 10 days where you don't have to use your passport.
Oh,
because they take your passport.
Oh, right.
And I don't have that 10 days. I actually don't have it leading up to the tour.
Oh, shit.
Which is insane.
Right.
That's mad. So, yeah, I have a better sense of how little time I have outside of touring.
Okay.
That's how busy it is this year.
Right. So that's a curly problem from the booking agency to deal with now.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Also for me, I think I just got to get 2 passports or something. I think you can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
One of your close collaborators and longtime friends, you've got many writing credits on their work, and there's also a strong Brissie connection there. Jordan Rakei has recently released an album. The
Loop.
Is it the Loop? It's the 3rd, 4th.
Man, lost count, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's his 4th studio album as Jordan Rakei, but he's also got like the side project Dan Kai as well. So.
Okay, right.
Because he had like this mission of like, I need to put out, I think it was like 5 albums by the age of 30.
Wow.
And he managed to do it.
Whoa.
He was a bit mad. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's maybe the 4th album, full-length album.
Right. This is sort of like jumping in almost on the tail end of your journey with Jordan Rakei. But what is this period like, and what is that album meant for the band, for you? And
yeah, so it's just kind of, it's like go time. As soon as that album drops, you have everything booked in and ready to go. This was one of the first projects that I've had very little input in.
Right.
So he actually worked with a lot of other musicians and with a new producer and stuff.
Right.
Just a new approach, which is really cool for me, to be honest, because we're reasonably close and we have a lot of this of similar like tendencies in music. Yeah. And at some point, when you're in a room with someone that you've worked with a lot, you've been in that room a lot, you know what they're going to do before they do it. Sort of have the same sensitivity, so we're always going to produce the same thing if we're not careful.
Okay.
So it's really cool for me because he worked with other people.
Yeah.
So I got to hear a fresh Jordan Rakei album.
Right.
With the exception of like one song.
Okay.
The one, actually, real fun side note, the one song that I have a credit on for co-writing, we started writing that song. There was like a totally different version of it back in like 2015, I want to say. And we did that over in West End at his old home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he just brought it back for this album. He's like, I really want to use this. I was like, oh, sick. Cool, I'm still on the album.
Right.
I still got a credit.
Yeah, okay.
But so, yeah, all it really means for me is get all the new music, learn all of it, and then we all get together and we arrange everything together. It's really, really collaborative.
Yeah.
Being in his band, which is really cool. Especially because I've learned now in the pop world, what usually happens is you kind of get a music director and that guy tells everyone what to play.
Right.
It's like just a more efficient way to work.
But
we kind of work as if we are a band.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's really fun. It's just like a fun time of like creativity, working out how to best represent this music live.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in this case with the Loop, where one song accepted, you're kind of coming to the tunes a little bit fresh, and you get to kind of explore them a bit in a live sense, but you get to do that on your own terms.
Yeah. In some ways, yeah. But in the end, you're a session musician.
Yeah.
And your main objective is to serve the artist and make sure whatever they're trying to bring to fruition comes to fruition.
Right.
So it's very much like a service sort of role,
Okay.
I feel. So, which is a lot easier, to be honest. it's a lot easier to be playing guitar on someone else's music and making decisions than like creating your own music, for me anyway. Because they're the decision maker in the end, and I just have to understand where they're going.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're making your own music, you have to put your foot down and say, this is where I'm going. And that's hard for me to do. I find that really difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But I think within that space as a session, as most frequently a session player, I think something that struck me about you, I think just seeing you on videos and then being able to find you in an unlikely live setting, like, okay, when I go to a Jordan Rakei gig down the road at the Princess Theatre, of course I'm going to see you there.
Yeah.
But when I happen to be down in Sydney and catching a Priya Ragu show at the Opera House, I'm like,
Yeah.
who is that guy? I know him from somewhere. And it's not like I'm just going to like be able to Google, guy with a red beanie who plays guitar, like. But then I was able to, like, actually use my brain and go, he's in Jordan Rakei's band. I think you found a way to sit in a good space where you're kind of like holding your own groove and it's distinct, and supporting the main direction that you're going in at the same time. It's like a nice space there. It's like you can shine a little bit without detracting away from, say, the person who's leading the band. Yeah,
and I think part of that just has to do with the fact that you need to, well, you don't need to, but I think it's pretty helpful to like kind of find your own voice on your instrument or your own feel a little bit, because it becomes this thing that people go, we want that particular thing that you have. There are certain players who have stood out like that for ages, and then they become solo artists because it's that strong. Like someone like MonoNeon, if you've ever seen him. He's a bass player. He's also got just a visual crazy style. Another example would be Thundercat, actually.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So Thundercat, he was a session bass player for like a long time.
Right.
First time I saw him, he was playing with Erykah Badu.
Yeah, okay.
And but he was playing a 6-string bass, and it just sounded a bit different than everyone else's bass.
Yeah.
And it stood out a little bit.
Right.
And he couldn't help but shine. And at some point it was like, no, you are an artist in your own right.
Right.
So I think there's a little element of that. I think I do something that people seem to like.
Yeah.
Which is really nice, because I know that there are enough guitar players out there that can play me into the ground. Like just true. This morning I met up with some friends that I used to work with here, and we just had a guitar jam. It was like 5 or 6 guitar players just sitting in a circle, just playing with each other.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you guys are so much better than me. You're just sitting in Brisbane doing this. You're so insane. You're so good. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's always like, you can either be lesser than, better than, or different than. You know what I mean? And I think different than is in some ways it's easier if you can connect with it, if you can find your way there, because you're just being yourself.
Yeah.
But it's a little hard to arrive at that. It's a little more difficult to arrive at that than to just practice until you're amazing,
Right. You talked about never planning too much, or just like having stuff in advance until maybe the coming year. Or the present year, when you have a lot of touring logistics to manage.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who hugely resonates with this bucket list term, but that's what's in my mind at the moment. When we talk about touring and opportunities and renowned places to perform, there's a lot of places on people's top list there. And we did brush past the Sydney Opera House gig for Vivid recently. I discovered you on stage with for Priya Ragu. Can we just like take a moment to replay that, and what's that like for you?
Yeah, playing the Opera House?
Yeah.
It was weird. It was interesting. It never really occurred to me as like, that's a thing you can do, until while I was living here, Hiatus Coyote played it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Hiatus is playing the Opera House. Oh, I'd fancy playing the Opera House. That'd be amazing. That'd be really cool.
Right.
But beyond that thought, I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
So it was definitely surreal.
And this is the concert hall as well.
Yeah. Like, super iconic. But then also, like, it's weird because I've done so much gigging now. When I went in there, because of the way the venue is, the way it's structured, the way it's laid out, it felt more like I was doing, because I did years of function gigs. So you're like playing at like, some law firm is having a big blowout party or something like that.
Right.
like at the convention center.
Yeah.
It felt more like a convention center gig to me than anything else.
Right.
So it was
Something
kind
about
of
the layout of the chairs and
like the stage is all like this this gray carpet. It's a very specific thing. It's like an office. It's like office carpet.
right.
Is what it feels like.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then everyone's like on comms all the time. So you're in your green room, and then this woman that speaks over the speakers and like, start the stage in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, it's weird. So it kind of disconnected me in a way.
Okay. Right.
And then we went out there, and I have no problem being on stage. I'm so used to it. So the enormity of the room kind of just didn't really hit me. I was just kind of like, oh, cool. And for reference, for people that don't know, this was an event that was all South Asian artists.
That's right. Yeah.
So the one thing that...
Was it Spice Trails? What was the name of the
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't even remember,
But
to be honest.
Astral People put it...
Yes.
brought it on, or was working with Vivid to put on the night.
Yeah.
Which headlined, well, not headlined, but featured Raf Sapera, Sid Sriram, and Priya Ragu.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing to see Sid Sriram, by the way. Oh, my goodness. What a talent. What a voice. Amazing. But yeah, to walk out on that stage and be like, whoa, brown faces. Just all brown faces turning up.
Right.
That was really cool. That was
Yeah.
probably the most surreal thing in terms of the experience.
Okay.
But otherwise, I kind of felt like this is another gig. Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I would put everything into every gig, but I was like, there's no reason why this venue is any different than any other.
Right. Because I've in liaising with them to do some shooting down there, and also having some work colleagues that have worked with them at the past. I've kind of realized it's a very old school bureaucratic institution that is behind this wondrous wondrous thing, which has got such a troublesome history from being built and all kinds of things. But it is, it's funny to sort of, everyone like falls in love with this amazing building and everything about it. But it's interesting how you can like walk on stage and it feels like a convention center, or you kind of feel like you're dealing with like a government institution if you're trying to get permission to film an independent documentary there. It's like,
right. So what, were you doing that for this gig? Or was that for something else?
This gig I was there purely on pleasure.
Okay.
I was down in Sydney working on a different event that happens to be around that time every year, so I usually get a little taste, and actually got to see Hiatus Coyote in that room the previous year. Yeah.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah, which was really, really enjoyable because I'm from the Blue Mountains scene where Perrin is from, and like knew him from up there, and
cool.
There's quite a few punching above our weight sort of Blue Mountains exponents, similar to some Brissie cats that get out there. There is an old Brissie connection for you, despite talking about Auckland being your other hometown. When was your time here, and what was that like?
I moved here in 2009.
Yeah.
January 2009. I was only 19 years. Oh, I was 18 at the time.
Okay.
And I moved here with my band at the time. So we were a band in New Zealand.
Whole band move.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Dude, like 8 of us.
Whoa.
We were like, let's do it, man.
We're gonna move to Brissie.
Yeah.
Why Brissie?
The big city, man. Because it's a little bit bigger than Auckland.
Okay.
And we had a few connections. We knew some people here.
Yeah.
So we were like, that's a good place to like try and get our foot into the Australian music scene. There's a real famous sort of saying in New Zealand. It's like you're world famous in New Zealand. So you could be the guy in New Zealand, and it doesn't mean a lick anywhere else. You know what I mean? Which is okay for some people, and it is fine. It's pretty hard to like survive off of that.
Okay.
So anyways, especially when you're an 8-piece band, my God.
Right.
So we tried to do that. But the band eventually like sort of dissipated very, very slowly. Right. Very long, painful death.
It can be like that, right? Big relationship, big 8-way relationship.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it went from 8, 7, 6, 5. It was like that. Yeah. But it was also just like we made this bold move to like move country together and everything. Yeah. So we were holding on to the dream for as long as we could. But so I lived here for 10 years, just like getting my foot into the Brisbane music scene.
Right.
Teaching music as well. Working with other artists, Brissie artists, and then that was a good 10 years.
Right. Yeah, you've done one little jump up, chosen Brissie because of some connections.
Yeah.
And you're playing around in some bands, and at some point, your friend who had big visions gives you a call, and it sounds like that changed your life somewhat. Can you tell me about that?
Boy, did it. Yeah, man. Man, honestly, like, I feel like I owe Jordan so much.
Right.
And I try and give it back as much as I can by being his guitar player, by helping write and create music and just, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just wanted to change. He moved to London, and then he called me up and was like, man, like, you should come to London. London's really, really cool. And I think you'd love it here. I think you need to get out of Brisbane. And I just like was almost convinced, but I was way too scared. Like Auckland to Brisbane felt like a big move. Brisbane to London is like a whole different bag, man.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like going from the kiddie pool to the big pool,
right.
and then from the big pool to the middle of the ocean is what it feels like. So I was just like, I'm scared to death. There's just no way. And he made all of the effort he could. He was like, okay, I've got a tour coming up, European and UK tour.
Yeah.
I want you to play guitar in my band. And you can also...
He'd been there for how long at this stage?
He'd been there for like a year and a half.
Year and a half and made that much progress?
Yeah, man, he made so much progress in no time. Wow. And it was just because London was like, we welcome you with open arms.
Wow.
And because he hustles. People don't really know that about him. He's actually got so much hustle and drive.
Right.
And not in a gross way. I've seen people that hustle in a real gross way. He's just very focused, extremely focused. So he made things happen. And then he was like, yeah, I'll have you on the tour. And you can also be my opening act for a few shows. So you can do your own thing.
Street rat.
Yeah. So that was really nice of him, man. Like, he didn't need to do that. But he did. And that was just his way of, like, introducing me to London.
Right.
And understanding the potential. So, yeah, that was a big game-changing moment, that tour.
Right. And fairly early on in your time in London, you worked on you managed to put out your own record, right? In 2020.
That's right. Yeah, and I'd made most of that here.
Okay, right.
So it was mostly done. And just worked with some local people. Sampology helped me record the drums. And then I kind of just produced everything else myself.
Every other hat was yours, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Which is, don't do it, kids.
Not recommended.
Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's never, well, I mean, if you really have the skill to, then cool.
Even the artwork, was that right?
Yeah, I did all the artwork as well, yeah. I even took the step further because this is around the time Spotify was like, hey, we have this thing called canvases.
Oh,
So I was like, I'm going to learn how to animate, and I'm going to animate a canvas for every single song. And I did rotoscope animation, which is frame by frame drawing.
With no background in it?
With like, no background, no background. Just like watch some stuff. I saw like the movie A Scanner Darkly and was like, that looks so sick. What is that? And then I went and did that, and like just to get 12 seconds, I thought, like a 12-second loop. Cool. That'll be easy. And it took like days to do 12 seconds. And I was like, this is stupid. And then it was just like you put all that effort in and then you put that thing out and it just kind of like vanishes like a fart in the wind. And people look at it and go, oh, that's cool. And they move on with their lives because why wouldn't you? I do the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I always think about this. I always think about like, do you ever go to the movies and see a movie that you don't particularly like, right? And you just walk out and you just go, it's pretty meh. And you don't need to say anything more. Like some people wouldn't go beyond that. They just go, I pay $7, watch that movie, whatever.
Yeah.
But when you really think about it, like look at the credits, the time, the effort, the manpower, everything that went into that, so much work. And that amounts to you just going,
It's huge.
That's mad.
Yeah.
So it felt a little bit like that. But I took that album over and almost never put it out. And I just met a guy one day and he was like, do you do your own music? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, I like manage I have sort of a management company. I'll help you release it.
Right.
Just put it out in the world. And he just kind of encouraged me to do it. So I did. In lockdown, no less.
Right. So yeah, you couldn't or didn't tour it or
No, we booked like just a local show. I was going to do like a release party.
Right.
And then couldn't do it.
Okay.
And it was just like, well, at least I put it out.
Right.
Yeah.
When you were are you still currently doing Street Rat shows?
I am. Oh, well, not shows. I haven't done one in a while.
Okay.
But I'm working on new music.
Okay.
So I'm trying to have new music that I can put out to have an excuse to do shows again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it an inherently solo performance? What's the Street Rat show like?
I've just done it solo.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
But I want to have a band.
Uh-huh.
And I love the idea of being able to have a band put together. And I've met a few musicians in London who like what I do and I get along with.
Yeah.
So I feel like I could easily put together a band over there
Yeah.
and do something. But haven't had the chance to do it yet, or haven't given myself the chance to do it yet.
When you say solo, is it yourself on guitar and voice over some playback tracks, or are you jumping around on multiple?
It's just me and my guitar and a loop pedal.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've never done anything with tracks. I don't like it. Just really not into it
Right.
for myself anyway.
Yeah.
I understand why people do it, but I just like the freedom of like doing whatever I do.
Yeah.
So I try and make the most out of very little, but it is kind of fun.
How much of that do you encounter in your live session playing? Like, I know, like, we look, I don't know, maybe only 10, 15 years back, and I think, like, Tame Impala seemed to be, like, one of some of the early adopters of that stuff. I'm like, we're using Ableton Track, and it's, like, so ubiquitous now. And certainly as a someone who sometimes works in the live music industry, but more so as a punter out front, just receiving things, like, I feel like I understand the pressure to sound as record perfect in the live show as possible. But then when I'm paying to see a live show, I want it to be live. I want it to, like, maybe adapt to some weird situation that happened in the crowd, or maybe this little riff is sounding really good tonight. We'll extend it a bit. What is that like for you in your session?
I have a lot of opinions about it. Again, as a session player, I am serving what the artist wants, and that's all there is to it. So if that's what they want that very big, full sound, that is what we're doing, and I just have to be okay with it. And I have to learn to find myself within it. I've been learning that over time. I used to play in a function band here in Brisbane, and we did a lot of track gigs. We did a lot of just like, you're like playing a wedding, but they can't afford a full band.
Okay.
So you got a singer, you got me on guitar, and then a backing track doing like everything.
Right.
And when I first did that, I was like, this is crushing my soul. I hate this so much, and I hate myself. And I would always imagine one musician being in the room and being like, this guy's not even really doing anything, you know? But you know what? They don't see it that way. And all you're doing there is you're serving a purpose in that room. You're just facilitating a really good time for these people that just got married, for example. And that's all they care about. They want to hear horses. They want to hear, you're the voice, and they want it to be big, and they want to hear the song that they know.
Right.
And just having someone sing it live is enough for them. It's just enough energy. So you learn to like bring the energy through that, and I learned to like appreciate it on that level. But when it comes to original music, I really feel like it's at a cost of like a real experience for people, because now you go to like festivals and the opening acts of like the smaller stage have full backing track.
Yeah.
And like BV singing, and it's just this one person standing in the middle of the stage and all these like voices like a choir, and you're like, why? You're the opening act. Why shouldn't you just be one voice? And you know what I mean? And like, let us get to know you. I feel like it also does that thing, because I think on a subconscious level, people always connect with people's honesty.
Right.
I think they just do.
Yeah.
I think that's why the big vocalists back in the day, even though they didn't write their own songs, because we now criticize pop musicians for that all the time. She didn't even write that.
Right.
She had like 15 producers on the one track.
Yeah.
But like, look at Motown. You had like a bunch of guys in a room just writing as many songs as they could. Sweetie, baby, baby, darling, baby, sweetie, in every different way. And then they would get the most incredible, strong, earnest, real voices to sing these words that those voices didn't write.
Right.
But you connected with them because it was a real voice.
Mm.
And now I feel like we don't even have, we're like slowly destroying that by having this idea of like perfect, big, full sound. And then people always realize it afterwards when they go to, say you go to like a festival and there's all these like bands playing with track and it's really loud.
Yeah.
And then this one person comes out and their set is just like acoustic guitar and a great voice. People always walk out of that festival going, oh, I really like that one person. That really stood out to me.
Mm. Mm.
One, it was just different than everything else. But two, it was just like someone just put themselves forward in front of you and you found likeness in that. We like things that we find likeness in. And a very computery, perfectly auto-tuned voice is not a likeness to us.
Right.
I don't think. That's what I think, anyway.
It's almost like there's a bit of like hiding behind. It's like I don't want to not hit that note. I'll just mix the backing up a little bit. And
there's a lot of that. There's also live auto-tuning. A lot of people don't realize this.
yeah.
Like front of house engineers actually have plugins that they can like pitch correct you directly. People also have devices on stage that do it, you know. It is like auto-tune, but you can sort of tweak it so it doesn't have that auto-tune sound, just so it saves you where you're,
right.
you know, you're sort of lacking, I guess.
Have you ever landed in a position, I'm thinking probably mostly your session live hat, where someone like really strikes the right sort of middle ground, like using some but not too much?
I've seen it. I've never really worked with anyone so much, but I've definitely seen it where it's like, oh yeah, okay, like the track is filling in a couple of gaps, but for the most part, this is how I sort of gauge it. Like, if the computer just dies, can you still play a show?
Right.
And for a lot of people, that's no. And that's fine if you're not a band. Like, if your whole thing is like a whole big AV thing, like Sampology, for example, like his set is like, back in the day, he'd have like this huge AV sync thing. His MPC would like trigger video.
Oh, right.
And like all sorts of really creative, cool stuff. But he's still doing stuff kind of live.
Yeah.
But if the computer dies, everything kind of, it's at a detriment. But I see that as its own kind of art form. But when you have a bunch of instrumentalists on stage, I just feel like, or a few, you should be able to get by, you know. We used track for Priya's stuff, and we had a nightmarish gig where the computer failed.
Right.
And so I just went over to her, tapped her on the shoulder, and I was like, I'll just play guitar and you sing, and I'll back you up. And we did a few songs just quote unquote acoustically.
Right.
And everyone was into it, and it was fine. And I was like, cool, that's because you can sing.
Right.
So great.
Did you still have the drummer and the producer?
Not for that gig.
Oh,
so it was just me and the producer.
Oh, right.
But he was busy trying to figure out how to fix the problem.
Wow.
So
on your feet.
yeah, man, it was crazy. It was really crazy. But it was nice to know that, like, oh, I can just say, let's just do this song acoustically, and we can.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not a showstopper.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about your time in London and some of your earlier time in Brissie. I'm really interested in that pathway between the two because it feels like a really unusual one. Like a lot of Brissie folks, maybe less so now, but like when you grow up in a city like Brissie, like, you know, third, fourth biggest in the country, you tend to sort of look your lenses all towards like the biggest cities in the country. And then say if you grow up in somewhere like Sydney, like I did, you would not look at a Brissie or an Auckland. You'd kind of look at the Londons and the New Yorks and things. But that sort of pathway from Brissie to London, in your case, maybe it wasn't on your radar, maybe it wasn't planned. Like you talk about, like once you get there, you kind of realize the smallness of it. Like for someone like who's currently a musician here, like what's the potential pathway that's joining the two currently? Do you have a sense of that?
Not really, just because I was really fortunate to have someone that kind of made that pathway first.
Yeah.
And then kind of pulled me along.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to be able to walk in there and just go, I already have these connections.
Right.
I know this guy who knows this, who knows them,
Yeah.
you know. And I had a couple of small connections myself through like SoundCloud, you know. So I got to work with like a couple of producers or whatever just through that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of hard. I do think that like the internet makes a huge difference. I think that makes a huge difference now. You can make connections before you go over there. You can line up, sessions or whatever with people maybe. But I don't really know what their pathway would be. I feel like the logical progression would really be like Brissie to Melbourne and then Melbourne to London.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people in London that have connections to London musicians.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I say that right? Melbourne and London, yeah.
Right. And perhaps also it's like touching on something you said before as well. It's not maybe necessarily being the most amazing technical player. Maybe it's also trying to, find that like unique voice, unique spirit so that people kind of remember you, so that those connections you do make will sort of go a bit further, right?
Yeah, and because it will shock you when you go over there the first time. Well, it shocked me anyway. The level of talent and the amount of it, it was scary. Like I went to this jam night. It was just like on a Tuesday night, this R&B singing night. They have like a house band and singers just get up and do songs. And I've been to like all the jam nights in Brisbane and seen everybody and like knew what it was.
Yeah.
So like, let's go to this thing. It's at a place called Troy Bar. It's quite legendary actually in London now.
Right.
In terms of the R&B scene. And I went there and I was like, everyone's unbelievable. Like I don't think of myself primarily as a vocalist.
Yeah.
But I could maybe get up at a Brisbane jam and like sing and feel comfortable. Over there, I was like, there's no chance I would ever dare look at the stage, let alone get on it, because everyone was so good. And these people are just like everyday people who have jobs, who are like trying to make a way in the scene. Nobody knows them except for the people in that bar.
Right.
It's just it's a mountain of talent over there.
Right.
So you better find yourself.
Yeah.
Because everybody's good. What else do you have to offer? Yes, I don't know. I do think in some ways, if you are aware of that, you can cultivate that here. Tame Impala is like a great example of that.
Right.
Kevin Parker really has like his own thing.
Yeah.
And it's so his own thing that when you hear something that you can hear stuff that is influenced by it, you'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's into Tame Impala. It's the Tame Impala sound. It is a sound. And he made that here.
Right.
In Australia.
Yeah. And then he finds other unique voices like the Thundercat collaboration.
Yeah.
Those unique voices find each other.
And then people like Lady Gaga go, we love your unique sound. We want you to produce a song for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the high level at the jams, it almost speaks to me like being a case for being a bit patient on these shores and really honing that in and perhaps working the networking angle, because maybe that flip side of being in a Melbourne, a London, a New York, there's just like so many people that are all trying to climb.
Yeah.
And if you can like maybe get a leg up before you go in, then that's maybe a way of like expediting it or something like
exactly.
that. Right.
It's just, you just got to have a starting point, I think. It's really hard to find one though, but if anyone out there is wanting to come to London, I could be a starting point if you need it. You know what I mean? I'll do my best, you know, because I think there's so much talent out here. There really is.
Right.
And sometimes I see acts, like I saw you at the Bullhorn gig the other night.
Yeah.
And that's just a band that I'm like, I mean, they're amazing. They're really good and they're unique, and there are brass bands out there that do a similar thing, but they really have their own feel. And Roman is a star. He just is. He's one of the greatest frontmen I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And I say that not because I know the guy. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, there's no reason why, if they came up in Europe, they would be playing every festival in Europe.
Wow.
Easily. So, yeah, it's just like, I know there's so much talent here. I just I don't know how it crosses over. I don't know how you, also when it's a band that big, like how do you move all of those people over, and everyone is tied to their lives here, and it's all very complicated. Yeah.
Your recent Sydney Opera House show ended up being slightly underwhelming in a sense. What are some more memorable performances that you can recall from recent tours? Or
Well, very memorable performance for me actually was before I was thinking about it the other night. I was walking through West End. Oh, last night actually.
Yeah.
A friend of mine set up a little farewell gig for me
Huh.
because I was just going to leave Brisbane. I was like, yeah, bye everyone, I'm going.
Right.
My friend was like, no, I want you to perform. I want you to do like a farewell gig because I want you to do your original music.
Right.
And I was like, okay, yeah, fine. So she set the whole thing up for me. Shout out to Aaron. Thank you. And it was just like a nice farewell solo gig at the end.
Huh.
But they had like a projector set up on the back wall.
Yeah, that little like triangle-y bit
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And so I'm playing and I'm singing these nice sweet songs from the heart and everything, telling stories. What I didn't know was behind me on the projector was like some old German film, black and white film from like the 40s or something, or the 50s. And it just had a bunch of like little people who were like abusing animals. Like there was like a crucified chimp or something, like a monkey on a crucifix, and all these like this insane imagery behind me.
Coordinated or?
I had no idea what was going on. And I'm looking at all my friends, because all my friends came to watch, and instead of watching me, they're all looking up behind me, and I'm like, what is so interesting behind me that you guys are like, no, this is my farewell gig. Can you look at me? And then I found out that's what I turned around. I was like, what is going on there? All these like nude small people, dwarves and stuff, just like chasing each other with hoses and all kinds of weird stuff, headless chickens. I was like, what is happening? So that was memorable.
Right.
In terms of like big shows or just like amazing shows, God, that's actually a tough one. There's quite a few. It is quite a few. With Jordan, we did 6 shows in Tokyo, Japan, and it was in a little jazz club.
Oh, like a 6-night run.
Yeah, well, a 3-night run, 2 shows every night.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, real crazy. But it was like a jazz club, all sit down sort of vibes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like 200 people tops, sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be weird at
Yeah.
first. I was like, this is kind of weird because we're very used to like playing bigger stages,
Yeah.
and proper venues,
Yeah.
and then we go in this place. I'm like, oh no, what is this? This is going to be weird. But it ended up being like one of the best experiences ever.
Wow.
Because we were just like honing in on the set. We started going, just throwing in curveballs. Jordan just started going, let's play this song, a song that like our bass player had never heard the song before, and we're just doing it now.
He's just like watching you.
Yeah. And it just got really loose, but it was like so free. I played one of the best guitar solos I've ever played in my life on the last
any
night.
recording?
There's like a partial recording of it somewhere.
Right. Okay.
But it's like embarrassing because when I really get into it, I become like this weird, because I ride my guitar quite high up.
Yeah.
And I was just doing real awkward bodily movements and hopping really weird. And it felt great, but I watched the video back and I was like, please never show that to anyone. Ever. Is that what I have to look like to really be in the zone? That's embarrassing. I sound so good, but I look terrible. But that was an amazing experience. And on top of that, just the Japanese people and their attention to detail. Our sound was like pristine. Everything sounded amazing in that room, and they had everything you ever needed.
Yeah.
You just felt so taken care of. It was so cool, man. And it was cool to just like play in the same place 6 times to get a good feel for it and then start opening up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, freshly married, got a full year booked of touring. What's coming up? What's sort of on the horizon perhaps beyond that?
Good question. Big thing for me right now actually is I have a lot of demos sitting in my pocket. So just fleshing them out in my spare time.
Right.
I'm hoping to be able to like do something with that early next year. So yeah, I'm trying to use all those few weeks of spare time I have in the rest of the year just to work on that. But beyond that, like I said, I'm not very good at like looking ahead into the future. I mean, getting my now wife to move to London is kind of priority number one to me right now. But otherwise, I've always lived my life like whatever falls in front of me, I just follow it. So I'm just going to ride the year out basically and see what next year starts presenting to me as I go along. That way of life is like somehow paid off for me over the last 15, 16 years or so that I've been doing music. So I'm going to just keep doing that.
Okay. Well, you've been taking the Brissie connection to the world and, you know, a little bit of a success story for us and very generous offering to give a handout to a Brissie muser who wants to get connected in London. But yeah, I want to thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me on.